All right, hello everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back. It's Matt Solomon here with Mike Salata and Rick Solomon from the Center for Enlightened Business. Very, very happy to have you guys with us today, and we are going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to a lot of our hearts, and that is recovering from the never-ending battle of tax deadlines and deadlines. And so, obviously, as an accountant, it's something that is right in our face all the time, and whether we're fighting a battle of the current deadline or whether we're recovering from one and getting ready for the next, it's obviously a never-ending push and fight. And so today we're going to talk about how to overcome that. And so I'm really happy, Rick and Mike, to have you guys with us today. And one of the things that I want to really look at, and I'll start the conversation off here, guys, is when I talk to people, and I've asked our Facebook group, and I've asked our clients, and I've asked other accountants that I've spoken to, how do what happens when you're done with the deadline? And I hear the craziest stuff, and it's like, it's like they need the recovery period like a football player would need after a football game. And it's like they need tons of sleep. They're exhausted. They're too exhausted to go on vacation in some cases, and then they need a couple days to recover, and then they go on vacation because they need to relax. And it's like this brutal thing for such a non-brutal activity. There's so much that I see weighs on them, and whether it's the mental health, whether it's the physical health, whether it's time loss with family, or the business opportunities that are lost, I know that we've seen a lot of issues with the battle of deadlines. And so, guys, I want to bring the conversation over to you guys, and I want to pick your mind. I know Ricky's done some research, and we'll get into that later. But I really want to hear from you guys, your perspective on what you see, especially in the recovery process. And then we'll talk about why it doesn't have to be that way. But Rick, if you want to kick us off, just kind of share your perspective on this never-ending battle of deadlines.
Yeah, well, I don't have to tell accountants what kind of deadlines are there. They're constant, and we know they're just not personal income tax, business tax, and all those things. But what happens, and we see this a lot, it happened to me when I was in practice, is when the deadline passes, you've got all the work that you pushed aside while you were getting to the deadline. So there's always this period, I know, for me, after the April 15th, which was the big one, 2 to 3 weeks was just catch-up time. I couldn't even think about taking time off until mid-May. And it just doesn't go away. And you know that. And after a while, you really start feeling that. That really starts to weigh on you. And recovery time, it seems to take longer to recover, and there's always more to do. And then we're dealing with staff shortages and workload, all those other issues. And it's really tough. And I see accountants, they're either busting their butt to a deadline or they're in recovery mode. And then when after recovery and they take a breather, accountants don't really know what it means to take a breather. They take the phone with them, they're answering emails and staying connected, so they're not really away. Next thing you know, another deadline pops up. So it's really, truly, literally never-ending battle. That's just the nature of it.
Interesting, Rick, because as you say that, I just think about some of these stories we've heard over the many years we've worked together, and a lot of them haven't changed. It's this run from one deadline to another, and I think what really concerns me is the lack of rejuvenation, stopping, right? From one deadline, and you said it right on, you leave one deadline to go play catch up. And I know you mentioned vacation, but many of the people we've heard out there, vacation, they have no idea what vacation means because they're playing catch up. And as soon as they're getting caught up, if they even get caught up, there comes another deadline. And my big concern about all of that is, how are they showing up for their clients, their top tier clients, the clients that are really paying them a lot of money, the clients that they quote unquote love, right? The clients that they want to help build better businesses with or build better relationships with. How are they showing up? How is that affecting, that relationship, let alone the relationship at home? Right? How are they showing up at home? Do they have that energy? Because I know that energy zaps you out. Those deadlines can take all the energy and all your soul sometimes just to make it through, just fight that battle to make it from one deadline to the next and just get it done, if it's ever really done, right?
Yeah, and here's a big problem with that. And I say we because I'm part of the profession. I've practiced for a lot of years. We come to accept that as the norm. And we don't realize how much it's costing us, the price that we pay for these unending deadlines. And we say, well, it's what I have to do. It's part of my practice. But it's not really what you have to do. We're going to talk about that later. But I did a little quick research, which, nothing surprised me, and anyone can do this. But, what are the effects of stress on human beings, ongoing long-term stress? And I checked out the Mayo Clinic because I think they have a lot of clarity on the subject. And it's eye-opening. So at the level of the body, the way stress affects the body is a lot more fatigue, feeling a lot tighter, headaches. It can be muscle tension or chest pain, having sleep issues, not sleeping well, or stomach issues, loss of sex drive, which is no fun. And these are just the long-term effects on the body. That's just the body. When it comes to our mood, there's often associated with ongoing stress, more anxiety, restlessness, a sense of feeling overwhelmed and irritable or angry, can be more sadness or depression. And this is the stress. Tax season is stressful. Nobody can deny that. It's not just the deadlines, but it's the accuracy of the work. And am I going to meet we don't have any margin for error. It's got to be right. So it's very stressful. So this effect on the body, it's the effect on the mood. And then there's the behavioral impact. What do we do differently? And overeating, undereating, not going to the gym, not exercising, not taking care of ourselves. Sometimes abuse of drugs or alcohol to varying degrees, social withdrawal. So there's a tremendous price that we pay, a tremendous price. And we feel a lot of these symptoms, and the last place people usually look for it is stress. Oh, I don't feel that stressed. We tell ourselves that. And here's the reality. A lot of times we don't feel that stressed only because we've adapted to it. And we don't recognize it anymore. It's just part of this background hum, if you will. So we just, after a while, there's literally, and there's evidence in the world of psychology that tells you if there's a noise, actual noise in the background, as soon as the noise starts, you're going to hear it. If that noise never shuts off, after a while, you will stop hearing it. Your body has a way of adapting and tuning it out. And that's what happens with stress. It just becomes the norm. And then you're feeling that fatigue or chest pain or tension, or you're not sleeping, and you go to the doctor. They just can't figure it out. They checked out, they did blood work, I ran through all these tests. Everything seemed fine. I wonder what it is. We pay a very high price at a personal level for the stress and the never-ending deadlines. And we feel like we don't have any choice, but we do.
I really appreciate the light that you're shedding on that, Rick. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt, were you about to say something?
No, go ahead, Mike.
No, thank you. I really appreciate just because we don't look at it that way, right? I think, the accounting profession is one of those mentally strong professions where always fighting through, whether it be deadlines or just getting through work, even to the detriment of ourselves. So I think it's really cool that you shine the light on all those different areas, because it's too easy to sweep under the rug. In addition to that, think about the impact it's having on decisions that are being made, right? Most of the people that got into their own firm or started their own firm was for freedom to, have their own identity, have their own firm, their own business, do the things they wanted to do. And yet we become hostage to deadlines and getting work done. And we start to make decisions that don't lead us to freedom, let alone financial or success, or even just personal freedom and fulfillment in the work that we're doing. So not only are we sacrificing everything you said that stress creates, but all those dreams and aspirations we had in creating our own practice. So, I appreciate where you're coming from and really shedding some light on it, as well as, letting me tie in, the dream part of it, where we lost our dream in most cases.
Yeah. Mike, I appreciate that. And Rick, I appreciate that so much too. And it's so accurate. And I think, like you're saying, accountants just get so used to it. They're tuning out the noise that's humming in the background. They're giving up on their dreams. And it's so crazy because I speak to accountants every day, and it's like they tell me all this stuff that's going on for them. And it's like, well, why don't you work for somebody else? And they're like, well, I like freedom. I want my freedom. And the reality is there's no freedom in it. There's no freedom in the fact that you're breaking down your body slowly over time. There's no freedom in the fact that, like you're saying, Mike, you're not accomplishing the things you wanted to. Your dreams are not there. You don't have the time you wanted. That's not freedom. It's an illusion. And the worst part about it is that if you don't see it, you're just living a lie. And so, it's really, really crazy. And what we see too is not only that, and there's this impact that it has on the bottom line revenue. So in addition to the most important thing, which is your health and well-being and all those things, and having time freedom, of course, that's a huge piece. The reality is, at the end of the day, if it was just about the numbers, and I know that so many accountants are driven by just, I have to show up, I have to do this for my family, I have to get the work done, I have to do this for my clients and all that stuff. But the reality is, in this, the way of showing up and doing this work, and deadline to deadline battles, you're actually taking away from the main goal, which you think you're fulfilling every time you show up and work another deadline until your fingers are to the bone. And so what I want to hear from you guys too is, or either one of you or both, but what have you seen in terms of the way that this never-ending deadline work impacts bottom line revenue? So we know it affects the health, we know it affects the dream, but just bottom line revenue, forget that stuff, even though we should never forget that stuff. Talk to me about just the bottom line dollars. How are you seeing the deadline work impact those?
I've seen, I think I would call it a vicious cycle. I was having a conversation with a practitioner last week, and she was saying how I said, we talked a little bit about the numbers and the practice, and she said, I'm grossing about $250 a year. I said, okay, that's a nice little practice. I said, what are you actually able to pull out? She didn't want to, she got quiet. I said, look, I'm just curious, whatever. She said, 50,000. And we went into a conversation like, how are you living on it? I said, why is that? She said, well, the work got so intense for me, so I hired people. And And, we all know, there's fee pressure because tax work, all that work, it's perceived as a commodity. And so there's always the fee pressure, and then hiring people. And then, she had a decent practice, but was drawing nothing. And I said, how do you live on that? And she said, you adjust, you figure it out. And, Matt was talking earlier, he used the word freedom. Is that freedom? And she was working 60-hour weeks, non-tax season. Tax season, she wouldn't tell me. She said, I'm working 7 days. Let's just call it that. For 50 grand a year, I actually calculated what she was making per hour, and that was very painful for her to hear it. It was about $14 an hour. That's freedom. We don't really, yeah. And I mean, and to be fair, there are some who are making more money and making decent money with old tax work, but what's the price? We say, well, I give up more hours, but no, it's not hours you're giving up, folks. It's your life. And there's one more little piece, Matt, not a little piece, but another piece I have to talk about. We talked about the effect of all this on your body, on your mind, on your behavior. There's a big price that your family pays for it as well. And when I was having insane tax season in my practice, and my wife is at home with 3 young children, and she needed help. I mean, we had these kids together. She needed a little bit of help in the evenings. And I was at work, and I was talking to a friend of mine, a good friend. He was older than me and more experienced in practice. And he said, you just have to explain to your wife you're a CPA and you're going to have tax seasons, and that's the nature of life. So I told her that, and she accepted it. I mean, she's a good woman. She said, okay, if it is what it is, and I'll do my best. But did that make me feel good? Is that what I wanted for my family? Is that the life that I wanted? I mean, think about, is your life the way you want it to be, or are you a prisoner or a slave to these deadlines? So that's the part I had to share, Matt, because it's enormous, and everybody pays a price. It's not just you.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike, do you want to add to that, Mike?
Definitely. I think, there's facets all over the business and firm that are being affected, right? The lack of planning you're able to do in your own practice. As accountants, we're out there helping people plan for their businesses. You're not doing any planning for yourself, let alone your business. That's fallen to the wayside. So what's happening with your business? It's kind of just floating or staying stagnant. There's no real intention on what you're really trying to build anymore. Looking at your pricing, sometimes we're just so tired and exhausted. We're willing to take any client or any service in the door and just price it at anything just to make it easy, because we just don't have the energy or thought to really step up and say, this is what it's worth. This is what I'm worth. This is what I want to be doing. It's just too much after we've been so run down and through the ringer for, just working through the deadlines and just work after work. And as Rick said, the vicious cycle. So, there's a huge hit to our productivity, what we really want, and being in your freedom comment, the money that we could be making. In our relationships, Rick, you said family, and I'll go back to the firm, our relationships with our number one clients, our A clients. How many times have we missed a call or didn't get back when we were supposed to, or some people, something really vital happened and we didn't get back to the IRS, or we didn't turn something in when we were supposed to, and then there's a ramification to all that. It's terrible.
Yeah. And here's the thing, guys, and then obviously I want to talk about what our listeners can actually do about this, because we're getting pretty clear on what the costs are. And I'm sure people are resonating with at least some of it, if not all of it. And so, but before I get into that, this is the other thing that stands out to me so much. The reality is that it doesn't get better over time by itself. And so, we talk to people, and maybe your first year running your practice, you take it on, oh, that was tough, you recover, and maybe you get back and you recover most of the way, 98% of the way. And then the next year it's recovered. But because you never catch up, it's like never getting enough sleep. It's honestly like you have a car and it's never changing the tire. And so there's tread that just keeps wearing down over time. And even if you're doing some oil changes, and even if you're putting gas in the car, the reality is if you're not changing the tires when they need to be changed, you're at serious risk. And the risk is losing control in both cases of your life and your practice, and also of your car. And so the reality is that I talk to so many people, and Rick, you mentioned this, people just get used to it. They just accept it. Mike, you were talking about this. It's like, it's the cycle and it's there. But the thing is, it doesn't get better until you do something about it. And that's why we unfortunately see some of our colleagues in the profession that die early because of, heart stuff and those things. And we see people also what I see sometimes when I talk to the older people in the profession who are doing all the stuff that the younger people are doing, what happens over time is they have no lives. They hurt relationships with their family. They're not just strained anymore. They're hurt. And I talked to a guy 2 weeks ago who's got some older daughters, and they don't have a relationship because he's working 60, 70 hours a week forever, and so he doesn't have the connection. But what happens is it gets worse every year, and your body feels it, and on some level you know that. And so you have to do something about it to ultimately, if you want to get out of it. And what I see is there's sort of two ways of, the profession. The old way is kind of just keep working, and then there's a new set of possibilities. And there's the people like us and the other thought leaders in the industry who talk about what those possibilities are. And then there's a group of people who are just holding on to the old way of doing things. And so you really get to choose which one you want to be. And the reality is, if you hold on to the sinking ship, you go down with the ship. And if you start getting on the lifeboat, then you get some freedom. And so Rick and Mike, I want to dive into what that lifeboat looks like and how ultimately we can remove the battle of the never ending and the reoccurring deadlines and start to get some freedom and control back in our lives. So guys, if you want to talk about this, really, what we talked about is the way to do this is to get some monthly engagements that are high profit, and to start removing that time and that dollar to the relationship between trading your time for dollars and doing work that's really seasonal and draining and all these things. So guys, I'd love to hear you, because I know this is one of the areas that you both excel in helping accountants make this transition. Talk to me about what this looks like. Talk to me about how to get out of this never-ending battle.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say about that, because that's the question, right? The first thing that I need to say, and everybody needs to really get this, we're so busy doing what we're doing and caught up in all the things we've been talking about, we don't even recognize that there is another possibility. We don't see it. Like, I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm an accountant. I'm a bookkeeper. It's what I have to do. It's who I am. It's just the way it is. What kind of, how could you even raise such a stupid question? But here's the reality, and this is really good news. As an accountant, you are you have the most enormous opportunity in front of you and around you. It's there already, but you don't see it because you're so busy doing this, so busy, this deadline, next deadline, that you don't stop to go, oh my gosh. And what the opportunity is to step into a different role with business clients, some business clients, as a valued advisor, and use your years of knowledge and experience and expertise and wisdom to help them get better results. Now, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but you can learn how to do that. And you can learn how to have those conversations with business owners so they see you in that role. When you do that, and you got to appreciate, guys, we're speaking from experience, because we coach accountants to make that exact transition. Most of the transition is here. That's where it begins. And yeah, there are some skills to learn. But when you do that, here's what you discover. You can get engagements 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 a month and more as a valued advisor, delivering, helping the client get better results. You can learn how to do that. You got the skills. Will every business owner pay for that? Nope. Will a lot? Yep. More than you could ever handle or want. My guess is, and it's not scientific, 60, 70% of business owners out there would love to grow, would love to have an advisor. So it's on you to first stop and say, okay, what else is possible? And then start to explore the possibilities. When you do that, if you start exploring it, if you go in that direction, I will say this again, there is more business out there than you could ever want or imagine. And the result of making that transition is you get your life back, you earn a lot more money, and all those deadlines and all the work you're doing that you don't really love or want to do, or the pain in the butt clients you're working with because you have to, starts to fall away. It's a process. Doesn't happen in 3 days. It happens over some months. But if you're willing to go in that direction, your whole practice in life can be transformed. And you'll be better serving clients. So there's no downside to it. It's just a willingness to stop instead of running this way, taking the blinders off and turning your head. And at the very least, you know, I always tell people, explore it. See if it feels right to you. So yeah, tremendous opportunity. Business owners are hungry. They're starving for help. And we're so busy on the hamster wheel, running faster and faster. We turn around, there's a cat behind us. Oh my God, I better go faster. He's going to catch me. He's going to eat me. And we don't see past that. So yeah, yes, I'm passionate about it because I know it's possible. And I hate to see people suffer. I suffered in my practice. Anything you could ever do to get caught on that wheel, I was on it. I lived it. It sucked. It does. And we see it. I talk to people. It breaks my heart, some of the things I hear. I shared a story with you before about this woman who's grossing $250 and netting $50. And I said, well, what are you doing about it? You know what she said? Well, I'm going out to get more business. I said, really? You got something that's not working. It's practically killing you. So you want to do more of it? I said that to her. I tend to be direct. It's my nature. And I think it's how it serves people. And you know what she said to me? She said, I don't know what else to do. So there is something else you can do. That's why we're here. That's why we're sharing this.
And so that's awesome, Rick. And so I want to hear from both of you guys, and then I want to make an offer to those people who are watching us, that maybe some suggestions on how we can help. So guys, I know you guys, this is going to be a challenging question, but I want to hear a story from both of you guys. And I know it's challenging because you work with a lot of people and you have a lot of stories. But talk to me, if you guys can just give even one example, maybe one of your favorite cases or something more recently, even whatever, of somebody that you've seen who came in before they started working with you guys, and you know what it was like for them, just in terms of deadlines and hours and work and those things, and just the transition they made. And we don't need to get into the details of the work or anything like that, but just kind of cut and dry. Tell me about if their life improved or how it changed, revenue changes, anything like that. Any good stories that you guys have that you could share with me? I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, so we have a client in Arizona, Phoenix area, and complete stress ball, didn't know what to do. A lot of what Rick was just sharing, very similar. I don't know what else to do. This is all I know. This is how I was told it was going to be, so this is what I've accepted. But I'll tell you this, I'm always stressed. I'm tired. I'm upset. I'm not the best person to be around when I'm in deadline mode. And then as we were able to go through and help them shift over to the valued advisor side, spending more time with clients, doing ongoing work, premium priced work, making a difference, a real difference in the lives of his clients. Not just improving their businesses, but the impact it had on their family and their personal life. When he was able to get off the treadmill and away from what he considered commodity-driven work, living on this deadline to deadline kind of cycle, he felt uplifted. He felt empowered. He felt fulfilled. And I'll be very honest with you, in the first couple of years, didn't make a whole lot of difference in the financial side of business. He had a good firm, $500,000, small firm, an annual revenue. But what he found was a lot more free time. He was able to shed those clients. He was able to, that no longer were a real fit, that were just fighting them on fee all the time, turning their work in late, making those deadlines even that much harder. He's able to shed the deadlines significantly because he's working with less clients but making more from those clients in ongoing work. But what he really enjoyed was spending the time one-on-one with his clients, helping them to see the clarity in building businesses that they really wanted, to become more profitable and grow. And in turn, he was able to do the same in his own business. Freedom to plan, freedom to be intentful about what he wanted to build. And then he had a better family life. And then that whole stress ball kind of unraveled a bit. Not that stress doesn't come up and things aren't needing to get done, but he can deal with it much better. It's just a much better practice. And he's still going and, getting better and better and moving to that next level. But he's enjoying it. And every time I see him, he said, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it, which I love hearing. It puts a smile on my face every time. It's almost like our kind of, our little joke with each other, because that's the comment when I see him every time. I'm enjoying it, because he wasn't enjoying it in the beginning.
Awesome, Mike.
Yeah, I want to share a very quick story about an accountant. His name is Peter. Peter is in Michigan. He had a nice compliance practice, a few $100,000 a year. He was drawing about $80,000. He said that was fine for him. Wasn't a great living, but he was not starving. They paid the bills. He was sort of a person who didn't just spend a lot on anything. He'd buy a car and keep it 15 years and kept it in good shape. So life was good, but he hated compliance work. He said, I just don't like it. In the beginning, it was okay. It's boring. It's training. It's like too mechanical for me. I just don't enjoy it, but that's what I do. So he made that transition, that transformation in thinking and in his role with clients. And he started doing a little bit of that valued advisor work I was talking about. He was scared, but he went to one existing client to start, had a conversation. They engaged. He saw, wow, I'm making much more money with this client than I was making before, still doing the compliance work. Well, long story short, after about 2 years of that, he sold his practice. He said, I'm not doing any compliance work. He was very good at finding and having conversations with business owners. He really honed those skills. He had no trouble getting advisory engagements. So here's where he's at today. He does zero compliance work. When he picks up a new advisory engagement, they need compliance work. He says, the guy who bought out his practice, he says, I have someone who'll do it for you. He does a great job. I don't touch it. I don't touch tax returns or anything, but I know the numbers I get are reliable, just as the advisory work. So his income went from about $80,000 to about $250,000. He works an average of 50 to 60% of the time. He doesn't have an office. He's on the road. He loves to travel. He's married, likes to go to different places in the country for events and things like that. And he tells clients, hey, when I'm in town, we'll meet in person. When I'm not, by Zoom or Skype or something. He's really, really happy. And he and I stay in touch. And when we see each other, which is, every year, 2 years, he's got the biggest smile on his face. And the first thing he always says to me, and he says, life is good. And then we hug each other. It's a beautiful thing to see, because I know what his life was like before. And we were talking about stress before. You could feel it. You could feel it in him. You could see it in his face. It was just like one issue after another, staffing issues and getting the work out the door issues and all that stuff. He's a different human being and really enjoying life. There's a lot at stake here, and there's something we can do about it.
Yeah, I love that, guys, and thank you so much for sharing it. And just for those of you who are watching, if you're sick and tired of the deadline, if you're sick and tired of the battle, if you're sick and tired of the stress that it's reaching on yourself and your family and your well-being and all those things, and you're just ready to figure out what the next level looks like for you, you're ready to sort of take that step and to start getting your freedom back, real freedom, and to start getting control back and start getting your time back and to start serving clients at a higher level, just in terms of being able to free yourself to do that, then, we'd love to chat with you because that's what we do. So if you want to chat with us, you'll see there's a link in the comments, and you can just click on that. And ultimately, over the next few days, Rick and I have made some time available, even though our schedules are pretty tight right now. But check it out. You can book a call. There may be only a couple time slots open now because of other calls that we have set up. But if you want some help, if you're tired of the deadline stuff, if you're tired of the abuse that it's going, if you're tired of living in a practice that's not really genuine anymore to what you thought you were getting, then book a call with us. We'll talk through it. And our intention ultimately is to help you gain some method clarity, to really understand your business and to show you exactly what you can do to get out of that trap and to get to the next level. So we want to take time to understand you because everybody's a little bit different, and ultimately just give you some of that plan to get out. And so if you're interested, book a call now. You can do it in the chat box. In the comments area. And guys, Rick, Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys, as always, sharing. And I'm so inspired by the stories that you guys share and the work that we've done in terms of just helping people make this transformation. And it can be big. It can be scary. It can be overwhelming. It's sort of like if you find out you got to lose 100 pounds, it's like, oh, my goodness, how is that even going to happen? But when you have the right support, when you have the right plan, and you have the right commitment, people do it every day. And so, guys, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the work you do for our profession. And until next time, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Book a call if you want to chat, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.